This video is going to be all about hummingbirds. So we're going to talk about plants that can draw hummingbirds into the garden. But before I get started on that, I actually want to say that hummingbirds eat a lot of insects. So they're not just, it's not just about plants. And I was asked recently about how to have more fireflies in your garden. And I said, it was what plants will draw in fireflies? And I said, dead ones. You need messy places to end up with fireflies in your garden. We also need a little bit of a mess and no spraying to also invite hummingbirds into the garden. So, we're going to go through, this is a list of plants. This is a gardening channel, but we watch them in the front garden sometimes picking gnats, out of the air. They'll eat gnats, they'll eat small flying insects, they'll eat spiders, all kinds of things. So a little bit of messiness, not overspraying, no mosquito sprays, that kind of thing, and hummingbirds will, be more likely to visit as well. We're going to talk about some plants. One plant I always hear about being good for hummingbirds is weigela. Unfortunately for us, our weigela just blooms way too early. So we'll have flowers on this potentially late March. Certainly by late March, sometimes mid and even early March, depending on the season. So this is a gold foliage version. I've got a black foliage version back here. These are the perfect kind of tubular shaped flowers that hummingbirds are drawn to. It just so happens to not coincide here. So if you're in a northern area, this is going to be a good plant for you. So what we do have in this garden though, is we do have a staging of plants that are good for hummingbirds all season long. This one is too early. Let's jump over to one that's kind of right on time. The red buckeye definitely lines up and is coordinated with the arrival of the hummingbirds back to our area in the spring. Of course, if you're in the southwestern United States, you'll have year-round hummingbirds, but here we're going to have them for a season, or we're having them pass through heading to the north, and then they're going to pass back through in the fall, potentially back through our area, the ones that didn't stay here in our area. But the red buckeye lines up perfect with that. It has bright red tubular shaped flowers in clusters, high with a lot of nectar. And so that's what they're looking for, is really vibrant, bright colors, typically red. I mean, several of the things you're going to see in this video are definitely red, and they're red for a reason. But to draw in a particular type of pollinator. There's one other thing down here that will show you real quick. There's a lamb's ear along the edge of the driveway. One thing they do like is they line their nest with soft leaves, and so if you have those soft fuzzy leaves on that are an option for them in the garden. But that's the kind of thing that they'll go after when they're actually involved in nesting. So red buckeye, definitely a good early spring flowering one that happens to coincide with their arrival here in our area. Another good one with red tubular flowers or orangey kind of tubular flowers is bignonia, another native like the red buckeye. I didn't mention the white buckeye. The white buckeye blooms a little later, but it also has the perfect tubular shaped flowers for hummingbirds in a white version. There are some hosta down here below us on the camera, and we've seen many times the hummingbirds coming along and sampling the hosta flowers. The hosta flowers typically are late May, the entire month of June into early July for us, probably later for other people, a little bit, to the north of us. But that's another one we frequently see them on. A few other early flowering things. We can grow snapdragons here in Raleigh through the winter time and they'll last through all of spring until right about now when it starts to be into the 90s, but they happen to overlap with the arrival of the hummingbirds coming back. Rhododendrons, definitely on pretty much every list for hummingbirds as well. We have bee balm back here. This is the scarlet bee balm, and it's just about bloomed out. While we had an open garden event a weekend or so ago, and these were fully in flower, but you see the long red tubular flower on here. It's just an absolute perfect plant to have hummingbirds come to it. One thing we do out here is we'll put something like this that we know is going to draw in hummingbirds, draw in other pollinators. We'll put it near the patio here so that we don't actually have to come out from our screen porch to watch them. We also have our hummingbird feeder the same way, so that we can concentrate, we can watch them without disturbing them, is kind of what I'm trying to say. Steph has come up on the kufia. We have lots of different kufia that we grow every year, which again, you see that long tubular flower. It's just kind of the perfect thing to draw hummingbirds in. There are a lot and lots of Kufia available now. Some will be perennials, some will be annuals for you, depending on where you are. We're growing this one up, interestingly, up through the middle of another plant. But again, we're putting some of these things that we know will draw these hummingbirds in to this space where we can watch them without disturbing them. We have our hummingbird feeder up here. We actually have not filled it this season. Here we are in July. We've had pretty regular rainfall, and we've had just everything so floriferous this season out here in the garden that I hadn't really needed to think about it because there's been plenty out here for them. We also have a water source out here as well. So as it gets hot and dry in the middle of summer, it's kind of important to have both, water source and possibly a food source. You don't need to dye they need the red color of the feeder itself is good enough. You do not need, to dye the sugar water that you're putting in there. Here's some Terenia. We typically can do these from seed. You'll get white flowering ones and purple flowering ones. They typically have that white throat and then some sort of color around the edge, but you see that tubular flower, a great example of something that will draw in hummingbirds. This and what else do we have out here in the garden annual wise stuff? Fuchsia, impatiens, petunias. Petunias would be another one. We don't typically grow a lot of petunias, but petunias would be, definitely on the list. Angelonia. We do grow lots of Angelonia. Typically, this year we have less Angelonia than I mentioned it earlier. We have less than we've ever had, but it is a good one to get hummingbirds. Daylilies are on the list for hummingbirds. This is autumn minaret. It's 7.5 feet tall, so it's definitely at the perfect height, to have a hummingbird come in where they're going to feel safe up above, the garden floor. That's one of those things when I'm thinking about that Terenia back there. Yes, it's shaped properly. Yes, it's a good flower for them, but it's not necessarily the safest feeling spot in the world along that little garden path, where they can't, see anything around them. But certainly on something that's tall in the garden that has this perfect shaped flower. This Cestrum parkii comes up in probably too many videos, but it is absolutely the perfect plant for hummingbirds here in the garden because it never stops flowering. So when I talked about having early flowering things, this thing flowers from summer right into fall. So this will carry them right through. Literally, we're filming this the last day of June here. This thing will still be blooming in October, potentially, with those yellow tubular flowers on it. The other thing out here that we concentrate on is having perches. So what I just talked about on the daylilies, them feeling safe, they actually get on that weeping redbud that's in the back garden. They get on the top of the bird feeder that's in the back garden. They get on top of the shed. Anytime I see them stop moving, it's always somewhere that's pretty high, 6-8 feet up. So having some perches, some narrow trees, some weeping trees, and things like that are good places for them to be. Feel safe in your garden. Obviously, there's a ton more things that I'm going to show you in this video that hummingbirds will come and visit. Up to 2,000 flowers a day, and they like different things. So if you planted all of one thing to get hummingbirds in, it may work temporarily, but they really do want to visit a lot of different things in the same day. So this red, saucy red salvia, our rhythm and blues salvia in the back there, any salvia really that has that deep tubular flower is just kind of designed for them. Really, I took a great photo of a hummingbird on this a few years ago, and I cannot find it right this minute. We also have several lantana in the garden, yellow, orange, some annual, some perennial, but lantana is definitely a good one on the list. And so again, we're just trying to have as much variation, as many open flowers as we possibly can, giving them choices here in the garden as they visit, and then also, again, staging it from spring flowering things right through summer flowering things and into early fall as well. Here's a collection of things that they'll visit. The agapanthus, really good choice to have in the garden if you're able to grow them in your area. I got a lot of questions at the open garden about how to keep agapanthus in our garden here. It's really about having sharp drainage in the wintertime, so they need to not be wet in the winter. As long as they, the cold's going to put them to sleep kind of ugly. It's just they're still going to be fully green, not going to sleep at all, and then bam, it gets killed to the ground. And if it stays wet under that mush that kind of forms from it, really that's about the best way to describe it, through the winter they won't come back. But we've got them now, we've kind of figured them out. and they're just fantastic for having hummingbirds visit them. Right next to that is our native upright phlox. So Phlox paniculata. That is a perfect, absolutely perfect flower for having hummingbirds visit the garden. And then agastache right next door to that. And so here's three things right here together. There's a lot of bees on them right now. Any hummingbird would not be out here because they're, you know, shy creatures basically. The bees don't even recognize that we're here. They're just doing their thing. The hummingbirds are over here somewhere going, why won't they leave? The top of that redbud is where I see them sitting most frequently. I've got several photos of hummingbirds just sitting right on the top of that. That way they get to see over top of everything and just feel safe in this space. Another really good example of a flower that just kind of is designed perfect for them. A couple other things I know we have out here that we won't include in this video. We've got some tithonia out by the fence out here with the orange flower, the Mexican sunflowers. They're about 6 feet tall out there, big, beautiful orange flowers on them. We also have some penstemon in front of the fence over there, another one with the absolute perfect flower shape. Cardinal flower. Our cardinal flower is new, so it's just 2 stalks laying over there. One of them's laying on the ground, one of them's bigger. Hopefully they'll be bigger, better, fuller next year. I think it probably like a little more moisture and maybe a little more sun than it's in over there, although I've seen them in pretty dark shade. We'll wrap this up with these Indian pinks. This is one that, as you can see, is kind of perfectly designed. This is another native. We have, again, I think in this video, as we're talking through these things, we're probably 60% native, something like that. You know, and these things kind of time perfectly with the hummingbird migration as they're coming through or sticking around or, you know, passing back through in the fall. We got something for them pretty much out here all the time. And of course, we enjoy the flowers, but really what this garden is all about is the wildlife that it supports. And so we love supporting the hummingbirds, bees, and then the insects. You know, what I'm talking about, the gnats and the spiders and the other things that hummingbirds eat as well that aren't just flowers. You know, it's not just this is not just a flower thing. So if we were out here spraying, we would be eliminating one of the bigger food sources that these hummingbirds have out here in the garden. So there you go. Let us know down below the video what draws in the most hummingbirds for you in your garden. It's probably double just in this garden what I've just talked about. And that's, you know, because every time we start walking around, we go, let's go over to the Indian pinks or let's go over to that. And on the way, we see 2 more that I keep mentioning. So we've got a lot of things out here. And again, I'm trying to stretch the season out. You know, obviously I'm making content on YouTube too. I want the garden to always look good. So it just so happens that designing a garden that's perfect for hummingbirds is also perfect for the content on YouTube because something's always flowering, right? You know, from spring, summer, and into fall, you know, as they're going back and forth or sticking around here in our garden. So again, let us know down below what's the best hummingbird magnet that you have in your garden, and thanks for watching.